We are finally here, only 3 nights remaining until Lightfall actually comes out, and we get to explore the entire new world of Neomuna. But before we actually go into Lightfall, I figured I want to look back on the Witch Queen and the seasons that we've had so far this year, because I think it's going to be nice just to review on the storytelling behind it and how well that actually been. And besides me actually commenting on each individual season, this is kind of me just saying the entire expansion and the season that we're in. It's an opinion on how they all went. But of course, my word is not gospel, so by all means disagree or agree with me, and let me know in the comments below what your opinions are on the seasons, because I'd genuinely like to know. But we'll start off with the elephant in the room, which was the Witch Queen DLC. When this dropped, it was pretty much a game changer. If you compared the Witch Queen back to Beyond Light, there were big strides made when it came to the storytelling. And on top of that as well, with the addition of the legendary difficulty, it just gave it the added challenge that the campaigns desperately needed. I know they added things like you could rerun the individual missions under legendary or master where it added champions, but in my eyes, that probably shouldn't be a thing. It's good for replayability, I suppose, but it did become a bit stale after a while. And along with the Witch Queen came the Throne World, which, again, like Beyond Light, it came with Europa. We got a completely new world to explore, but this was actually an expansion on Mars, which was quite an interesting thing to see. So instead of taking the old Mars map and just reworking it into what they could do, they actually made the Witch Queen's realm completely new, which was a really smart choice because I imagine a lot of people will be furious if they just reworked Mars. But as a place to go and explore, the Throne World is still a very fun area to look around in, and it's a nice contrast between the regular, I suppose swamps you can call them, and the Lucent Hive areas. It just kind of showcases 2 different types of hive. Not to mention as well, we also had the Hive Lightbringers, which were a pain to deal with to start with, but then they kind of became a bit easy. I think that's just because of power creep though, if I'm being honest. At the start, when they first came out, they were quite tough to take down and felt like bosses, but obviously in later seasons, not so much. But speaking of seasons, because we're going to veer away from the DLC now, we're actually going to talk about the very first season, which was Season of the Risen, which came out alongside Witch Queen. But because Season of the Risen did actually go alongside the Witch Queen, I wasn't really expecting anything massive from the season. It's kind of just like a nice addition, if anything. But it did actually end up tying in quite well to the story, whilst kind of providing its own little bit of uniqueness as well. Most of the time we were doing Season of the Risen, we were working alongside Keitel, and I was actually very happy to see the Brachus Cabal actually show up during some of the battlegrounds. That was quite a nice touch. When it comes to Destiny, I always love seeing NPCs helping you out, because it's just a little bit extra that we're not used to seeing, because when we're running strikes or nightfalls or raids, we're always doing it within our own fire teams, so there's never any external help kind of thing. It's just us versus them. So every now and again when an ally does show up and it's an NPC that's not trying to kill me, I'm quite happy with this. But a massive bonus, at least for me anyway, that did come with the Cyprus Battlegrounds was when you actually got to the end and you dealt some damage to the boss, you went into his mind through this weird kind of tunnel of light is the best way to describe it, and ended up fighting a Hive Lightbearer, which was really fun to do. And not to mention that it did have 3 phases in its health, so when you got 1 phase down, you'd have to take down a copy of Savathun. But the only way we could do that is if we used the Psionic Spears to actually hit Savathun with. And as you may know, those spears ended up becoming the Arc Hunter Super, which was the Throwing Thunder Spear. And not to mention a lot of speed boosts and everything you could do with that, like the Blink for example. It actually got integrated into Arc 3.0, but that's just a whole different bonus alongside the season. Storytelling for Season of the Risen, I'm going to be honest though, it was more or less non-existent. At least I felt it was non-existent. It was just a case of, oh, the Hive are causing trouble here, go there, kill them all. That was pretty much the gist of it for me. But then we had my second favourite season of the bunch, which was Season of the Haunted. And straight away, as soon as I saw the armour sets for Season of the Haunted, I was hyped to get going and get to Season Rank 100 straight away, because I really wanted that skull mask. And not to mention in the trailers, you saw what the actual weapon that he was going to use, which was the Scythe. It was a special weapon, sadly. I really hoped it was a glaive of some kind, because if they made that a glaive, I don't think I'd put it down. But I'm getting sidetracked. So, the Season of the Haunted, when it came to storytelling, far better than Season of the Risen in my eyes. It was going from basically where the season was just a side note to where the season is the major addition now, because the DLC is done with. And not only that, it put a lot of focus onto the Crow, Zavala, and Keitel being the main 3 characters. Obviously, Eris Morn was there as well, but she was more like a side character that just helped out a lot. But seeing them confront their nightmares in a story kind of stance was really nice to see, and I think it gave closure to quite a bit of the community as well, because I know there was a lot of questions around who Zavala's actual wife was, but then by finding that out, we end up finding that Crow is still afraid of Aldrin Sov, and then we actually got Gaul coming back for a little bit, because that was Keitel's nightmare. And alongside all this, they brought back the Derelict Leviathan, which was pretty cool in itself, and I did enjoy roaming around for it, But Bungie, please don't tie so many triumphs to mini-bosses that only have a chance to spawn. Because, my god, I'm pretty sure a lot of people can share in this pain. When you actually went into the Direct Leviathan, if your boss that you were trying to kill wasn't there for the triumph, you'd have to wait at least a good half an hour, if not more, for it to spawn. Which makes these tasks extremely tedious. Even if you're running around killing absolutely everything in that room, it will still take a long time to spawn in. But let's talk about the actual story content, as in the missions. So, the missions themselves were quite good. I think having that slight element of fear at the start was a really nice touch. So, there were these Cabal that you just couldn't do any damage on because they were nightmares, and they basically two-shot you because they were that strong. Obviously, later on in the 7 missions, you actually find ways to defeat them by literally putting them in an incinerator, which, I'm not joking, you can do it on 2 different 7 missions. But talking about the 7 missions, really good additions to the season. I actually enjoyed doing all of them. There wasn't really a bad one in my eyes. Whether you're doing the 7 mission where it's just doing all the puzzles to get to the end the first time, or actually getting to the end to defeat the boss the second time, then it was always fun to do anyway, because the route kind of changed as well. And a final footnote for this season, it also contains my favourite solo SMG, which I'm sure a lot of people love as well, the Callus Mini Tool. The thing absolutely rips, and having a crafted god roll of it is even better. But I feel like I've talked a lot about Season of the Haunted, so I'm just going to move on to Season of the Plunder. And I'm going to cut Bungie a little bit of slack here, because I think Season of the Plunder was supposed to be kind of just a fun season, nothing serious on the story side, albeit it does play into the main story as well. And the second reason I'm giving Bungie some slack is because if this season wasn't worse than Season of the Haunted, then Season of the Seraph might not have been as good. It's kind of having a tilted perspective on the whole thing, so if you have something good, then it goes bad, but then it becomes really good to the point where it's better than the first thing. It has a much bigger effect than just being better than the first thing, if you kind of follow that. But anyway, Season of the Plunder. Honestly, story-wise, I didn't really get into the story that much. Catch Crash kind of got repetitive for me. I wasn't too much of a fan of it. I did do it when I needed to. Same goes for Expedition. It just felt repetitive and sluggish. It just felt like I was doing a strike at the end of the day, which I don't really want to be feeling like I'm doing when I'm doing story missions. And yes, there was the Pirate Caves, but they just literally felt like lost sectors. Like, I think I ran one with a Shuri once, and we just nailed it in 2 minutes flat, so they're not difficult, they're literally just mini lost sectors. But there is a saving grace to Season of the Plunder. The weapons were actually interesting, to say the least. I'm not going to say good, because saying they're good would be a bit criminal, because especially since some of the shots I have is the accuracy is just completely hayward. But there were definitely quite a few good guns from Season of the Plunder that would make an addition to anyone's armory. But like I said at the start, I'm also cutting them some slack, so I'm not going to be too harsh when it comes to this season. And while I understand that is a very short segment for Season of the Plunder, I really want to move on to Season of the Seraph, because this literally just ended, as of me recording this anyway. And my god, Bungie definitely pulled the rug out from under us. If you didn't obviously watch any of the data mined information first, if you went into this completely blind, you probably weren't expecting this kind of ending. I'm not going to say it for spoiler reasons, but feel free to go and check it out. It's on Destiny's channel, so if you go over to the Destiny 2 channel, then you can see the ending there. But let's not talk about that. Let's talk about the season itself and the story content in it. Story-wise, brilliant addition. It was really well told, and it's nice to finally see Elsie came back. Even though that me and Ashuri did catch that sometimes in the story, her voice line seems to, like, change voices in a way. It's very hard to see, but you can notice it if you listen out for it. But besides the point, the interactions between Elsie and Anna were brilliant. The fact that we actually got Clovis Bray back into the story as well after Beyond Light, I thought he was just going to pretty much be done after that. But no, Clovis Bray came back, and then obviously Rasputin, because that was the whole point of the season. It was a really nice interaction just between all 4 of them. And not to mention there were twists and turns literally everywhere in that season when it came to the story. I felt like you couldn't really predict what was going to happen next, which obviously I'm not watching any of the spoilers, so that's a really good thing if Bungie is trying to keep it in that direction, where you're just constantly guessing what's going to happen next. Because I love the storylines when they do that. But let's talk about Operation Seraph Shield, which was the exotic mission for this one. Because I feel like Operation Seraph Shield was used enough during the season, so you'd constantly be referring to it anyway. Whereas if you look back to Vox Populi, or whatever it's called in Season of the Risen, then it's not exactly the same kind of level. Yes, it's still an exotic mission, but it wasn't used enough for it to actually be something to worth coming back to constantly. So the mission itself felt way more ingrained into the story content, especially if you were going for the catalysts on the pulse rifle as well. But talking about the actual story missions, so this would actually be the Seraph Battlegrounds. These were actually very fun for me because I've never gone into the Rasputin bunkers before. Like, I think the only one I've actually done is the one on the EDZ shore, like as part of a strike. It used to be in the old Destiny rotation, but it got moved over into Destiny 2. That's the only time I've been in a Rasputin bunker. I was never around for Season of the Worthy, I think it was, when Rasputin came about. So this was kind of my first interaction with Rasputin. So going into the bunkers themselves and exploring these underground areas that you just wouldn't guess were underground all this time was really exciting for me. And yes, I know because it's a different instance, it's not the same overworld map, but I would actually love it if Bungie just pretty much put the bunkers in permanently and you could go down into them if you wanted to. Like, I think that would be a really cool addition. Seraph Battlegrounds themselves is really cool to see because you've got the watchtowers that can kill you pretty much instantly after 15 seconds. The enemies are reasonably tough. There doesn't seem to be any kind of dull moment in the Battlegrounds. Even the end bosses, especially the Shriekerai, they seem to put up a very good challenge, like, regardless of your light level. And I think this is to do with Bungie's new difficulty modifier, which I'm really looking forward to seeing in Lightfall. But that is all the seasons. And to be honest, I feel like we've had a really good year in terms of Destiny content because looking back on it all, yes, it's a slog towards the end of the seasons because we've run out of stuff to do. But when it comes to a storytelling perspective and what we actually got this year, I think we definitely got our money's worth, if I'm being honest. Whether that carries on for Lightfall, I cannot say anything just yet. But with all the changes that have been announced for Season of the Defiance, which is Season 20, then it seems very hopeful at the moment. But this is my final upload for The Witch Queen. If you did like it, remember to leave a like down below. And please let me know what you guys thought about this year's seasons. I would love to know. But that is it for me, and I shall see you all in Lightfall.